Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
I'm Whitney, host of the Real Estate Syndication Show. Every day, I'm interviewing experts that will help you to successfully invest in or grow your syndication business. Hit the like and subscribe button so you'll be on track to learn from the best in the industry. Happening on January 20th and 21st is Denver's biggest real estate event, the Next Big Thing. And it's shaking up how real estate professionals will define business success. This two-day event will give you tools so you can catapult your own business. You'll discuss how the world is changing and what's needed to stay 2 steps ahead. Together with 450 other professionals, you will build a foundation to become the next big thing. Built on the foundation of helping others build wealth through real estate, the Ruth team has created the ultimate tool that is this event, and it's called the Next Big Thing. 25 speakers, including Ryan Serhant, Kenyon Salo, Nebu Hatta, Stacy Veeden, Brian Moses, Natalie Davis, and Ryan Avery. Register now at thenextbigthingcolorado.com and use the code RESS to get $150 off, raising $175 million in 1 year. That's what our guest today is going to talk about. He's the director of investor relations at passiveinvesting.com, and they've done it. They raised $175 million in 1 year. And he's going to share his role, like many things that whether you are an active operator or a passive, you need to know. You're going to learn so much today about how they did that, even the scaling side of that. There's no way that you can physically take all those phone calls, right? As a director of investor relations, taking enough calls to raise that kind of capital, you'd have to think bigger. You have to do things differently than other groups, and they are doing just that. Our guest today, Andrew Davis, works for passiveinvesting.com, a real estate private equity group with $1 billion of assets under management. He lives in Asheville, North Carolina with his beautiful wife, Isabel, and their golden doodle, Piper. He thrives when constantly improving, making meaningful connections with others, and thinking outside the box. But ultimately, Andrew today goes through numerous things, whether it's KPIs, whether it's how they track those things, how he educated himself. He didn't come from real estate specifically, but he did have skill sets that helped him to thrive in this position. But I think as you're getting started in this business today, you're going to take those investor calls, you're trying to raise money, you're going to learn a lot today. But even if you're a passive investor, you're going to get a lot out of this show today and learning how he does this. There's so many similarities of how they operate and we operate, but this is a great team, and I think a lot of them. Andrew, welcome to the show. I'm honored to have you on. I think I've had most of your team on the show at one time or another, a couple of them numerous times. I've known them for a long time and think a lot of them. So pleasure to meet you personally, and just thank you for your time to share with the listeners your expertise and what you do there at passiveinvesting.com. So share with us a little bit about Andrew, though. Let's back up a little bit and hear a little bit about who you are, Andrew, and let's get into the syndication business and how you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's the feeling's mutual, and think very highly of you and your team and everything you're doing too. So I feel probably more honored to be on the show than you feel to have me. So thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm Andrew Davis. In terms of my title, I'm the director of investor relations at passiveinvesting.com. So we're a real estate private equity firm, as you and many of your listeners may already know. Right now, focused primarily on multifamily self-storage assets, but continuing to look for more opportunities to present to our growing investor network in all different real estate investment classes. So in addition to those, we're looking at hotels in 21 and always keeping our eyes peeled for good risk-adjusted opportunities that are going to have a lot of upside. But in terms of kind of who I am and how I landed here, I was born and raised on the West Coast, actually. So you are talking to me currently from Asheville, North Carolina, and it's been a little bit of a circuitous journey to get here. But my wife and I live here with our puppy. We've been here for about a year. And kind of my journey and how I got here is again a little meandering. I started working kind of my career in the consumer packaged goods space back in college. And so got recruited to work for Scott's Miracle-Gro, big lawn and garden products company, and just discovered I had a knack for selling. The joke at one of Dan's favorite jokes is that I used to sell crap, and that is quite literally true, because I used to sell steer manure and fertilizer and all kinds of stuff. And so if you can get people excited about that, you can get people excited about anything. So anyways, did very well there. Just continued to get promoted, and really, it's an interesting, as I have conversations, I'm in the process of hiring a couple people right now for my team, because this year has been an amazing year for us. We've raised 175 million in equity, approaching the 1 billion in acquisitions mark. So just need more help than I'm able to handle on my own. But one of the conversations I'm having with the different people I'm chatting with for these investor relations roles is, it's kind of, what have you learned in your career? And even if you were in a role that you didn't feel like was a good fit, or you didn't necessarily enjoy it, you probably found some things there that you enjoyed. And so one of the pieces of feedback that I continued to get over and over again was great presentation skills and great with people. And those were the things that I found that I just kind of felt most alive and got most excited about. And kind of the higher the stakes in the presentation, and the more people there, and kind of the higher the pressure, the more excited I got. And so really through that, I learned what I didn't like, right? I didn't really have a passion for that business. There was a lot of aspects of it I didn't enjoy, but what I did enjoy was building the relationships and securing trust. And I'd always had a passion for real estate investing. So I'm in my mid 30s now, really got fascinated by it, probably 19, 20 years old, just started reading, educating myself, jumped into, as I was doing the W-2 thing with these different CPG companies, jumped into doing my own single family residential real estate, and very, very quickly and a little bit haphazardly learned how to raise capital. Found a deal. My wife and I were living in Orlando at the time, found a deal in a great little market of Orlando, and put together a quick deck, pushed it out on Bigger Pockets, chatted with everybody I knew, and was able to raise about $150K for that first deal to do a flip. And it was kind of opened my mind to the concept of partnering, right? Partnering with people that need a place for their capital, but don't have the time, expertise, whatever it is, to put it to work in the way they'd like to. And did the single family thing for a little while, but over and over again, I got frustrated. I would put so much work into a transaction, and I'd get, 100, 150 a door cash flow a month, or, the flips, the profits that we would make on the flips just got eaten away by taxes, or didn't pan out exactly like I wanted. And so really just kept in chatting with guys and gals that I respected in the space, and seeing people that I really thought very highly of, either in multifamily or making the transition to multifamily to commercial. That scale, the efficiency, the opportunity to diversify really appealed to me. And so I also knew that I didn't want to go out and start my whole thing. I know that there's things that I'm very good at. We were joking this weekend at a company thing that I'm like Liam Neeson. I have a very specific set of skills, and there's things that I'm very good at, and then there's a lot of things that I'm not very good at. And so I really wanted to find a group where I could put those skills to work and make a contribution and be an impactful part of that group and help them get to the next level, and also be around guys like the managing partners at passiveinvesting.com and like my colleagues that are extremely knowledgeable, that I have so much to learn from, and where I can really just kind of contribute my niche, my superpower. So yeah, I've been with this group for just a little under a year now, and I've absolutely loved every minute of it.
That's awesome. I think you mentioned many things I want to go back to. I think to highlight and dive into some, because I know that pique the listeners' ears as well, as they are trying to learn how to do some of these same things. They're trying to develop those unique skills that you have, right? It's so important in our business. And I was at, we call it Care Group, but it's like a small group for our church this past week. And there was a question that came up. It was kind of random, but somebody said, if you could have any kind of ability, or if you could, I can't remember now exactly, but like, what would it be? Right. And that came up about the movie Taken, and Liam Neeson is Asa. And it's like, man, if I could, that's who I would want to be like, right? So I appreciate that analogy. I can relate to that, but that is also such a good analogy for hiring, right? I mean, you're looking for that person with those special skill sets for that position, right? And that's typically where they're going to shine the most. It's where they're going to be the most comfortable. It's where they're going to want to grow. They're going to be the most excited, passionate, all those things that you want in that top talent, right? That just A-class type of employee, right? And that's what we're all looking for. And obviously that's why they hired you for that position. I love that about, selling. If you can sell poop, you can sell anything. I mean, it's just crazy, but it's so true, right? I mean, you must have been good at it. And there's some great skills, that team or Dan, noticed in you. But you mentioned $175 million raised this year. That's quite an accomplishment. I mean, I just hats off to you all and your team, and I've always looked up to Dan and been friends with him for a long time. And I just think it's such an accomplishment. I want you to dive into that a little bit, though. But I want us to also get into a couple of the things that you mentioned. But but even after some of those things you mentioned, like building relationships, securing trust, is something you're good at. It's so crucial, right? It's so important in our team, in our business, and in building that team, and that they have those skill sets. So why don't you talk a little bit let's talk about how you do that specifically, and then let's talk about how you're scaling that through a team as well. So, how are you good at building relationships, securing trust? If you're going to raise $175 million, that's not just talking to investors at a local meetup, right? I mean, that's just not going to happen at that scale. So talk through that a little bit at this level, at this scale, how you build relationships and how you're securing that trust, so the listeners can think at that scale as well. I think until you can see somebody that's done that, it's hard to even imagine it, right? Or that's even possible. And so open their eyes a little bit, Andrew, to how you all do that.
Yeah, you bet. So I am a piece of what passiveinvesting.com is and what we're becoming. And so I think, just to pull it back, right? Like we have incredible leadership, right? These are high integrity guys that are 100% aligned on every deal, right? They're putting large chunks of their own capital in on every single deal, and have incredible experience, high integrity. Really, if you were to kind of consolidate the mission down, it's to build wealth alongside our investors for generations to come. And so that's really, I think we had this company Christmas party this weekend, and I got to get up and just chat a little bit about kind of what we've done. And the thing I said, Gary Vee posted something, I don't know, a little while ago, and he basically said, selling's only difficult if you don't believe in what you sell. And I was able to go through the room and look at every single person, every single team, and tell them, this is why you make my job so easy and so fun. Because I know I can look at our acquisitions guys, and I know they're underwriting these deals conservatively. They have, I think on our current deal, we're on version 30 of the underwriting, right? I mean, they are deep diving every single aspect of it. Our investor services team, our marketing, our self-storage leads, our managing partners, every single person in our group makes my job very, very easy. And then of course you've got the leadership and this amazing marketing team, right? Which we're everywhere. And so I get to just sort of manage all the incoming leads in the funnel. And so I do want to just be extremely clear that by the time I'm having these investor conversations, there's already been a lot of a relationship that's been developed. They've heard about us. They've seen us. We have an incredible number of referrals. We have a very high number of repeat investors. We have about a 62% repeat investor rate. So on any given deal, 3 out of the 5 investors are going to be investing with us for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, sometimes 6th, 9th, 10th time. And so we're very, very fortunate to have just a really wonderful group of investors. But I think that as I'm really wanting to replicate what I do, I think that when people think about the capital raising process, if they're new to it or they haven't had a lot of experience doing it, it can feel scary and intimidating. And they think that they're going to get asked all these deep dive underwriting questions they won't be able to answer, that every single person on the phone is going to have some gotcha question. And the reality is that the mindset that I really have cultivated in myself, and then the mindset that I'm cultivating and will be cultivating my team, is we're providing a tremendous amount of value. And that's not there's no arrogance or pride there. It's a privilege to be able to do that. But just like we value our investors so much and need capital for deals, they need a great place to put their capital that's going to deliver high returns and that they can sleep well at night. And so when I'm preparing for these investor conversations, I'm having these calls, I'm not whacking them over the head with all of the numbers if that's not what they want to talk about. Really, only about 5% of investors really want to go deep on numbers and look at the pro forma and analysis. And the majority of them, they have a list of questions, but what they're really asking at the end of the day is are you competent? Can I trust you? And can I really hand my capital over to you and then get back to enjoying my nights and weekends? Yeah. And I think knowing that and knowing that those calls are never about me, they're never about my team. It's always about what does this person need? I feel 1,000% confident in what we're doing and our ability to steward their capital well. And it's really just finding out what they need. And some people do need that they want to get on a Zoom call and go through the underwriting for 30 minutes, and that's fine. But most people don't. They want to get to know us. They want to get a sense for who we are, what we're doing.
I think it's very well said, Andrew. And I think there's such a mental block on our side as the operator, as investor relations person, or having those phone calls, especially early on. You're worried, right? What are they going to ask? Am I not, I may not have the answer. And man, that's already like this mental block before you even get started, right? And there's chances are you're probably not going to have all the answers for every conversation, right? I know these deals, like you mentioned, there's so many team members that have a different role and different special skills, like you're talking about. Just because you're answering the phone, you may not have every detail of the underwriting.
Right.
I mean, you just may not. It's not your unique ability or your skill set. You're not spending every hour looking at the underwriting like somebody else on the team, is right. And do you need to understand it? Well, of course, but probably not to the level that person is. And so that's just not going to be maybe even the best use of your time, right? Too underwriting every deal to that level of detail because you have people on the team that are doing that. But okay, so I just appreciate you highlighting that because that is such a roadblock in the beginning for most people. So you're building that relationship. You want to show them that you're confident. You're going to express about your team and your ability, your track record. All those things that many have questions about, right? How many deals have you exited? Well, those things. So tell me though a little bit about, scaling that now. So like, you've got that down, you're good at taking these phone calls. How do you get to 175 million? I mean, I would imagine, Andrew's probably not taking all those calls. Maybe you are. I don't know. Do you take all those calls? You talked about like you're hiring for this team. There's probably listeners right now that will reach out to you, looking for a position, in that type of role. We're hiring for stuff like that as well. Because I understand, just the need to scale and to do that job so well. But tell us a little bit about, your team, and even if you don't have them hired yet, just how you envision that and how you manage them. Who's responsible for what? Yeah,
you bet. So believe it or not, this year I did take the majority of those calls, and up until really the beginning of 2021, Dan was doing all that. I mean, he was handling the majority of the investor relations, right? But that's not what he needs to be doing. He's the CEO. He needs to be driving strategy and looking for new asset classes and running the team, right? And so I was fortunate enough to step into this position and have that handed off to me. And the trajectory or just how quickly it's grown has, I think, at least for me, taken me by surprise. And I went from having 2 full days of calls and then the rest of the time working on all my other projects, fielding questions via email, whatever it may be. Now right now, my calendar is booked up every single day through mid-January. And so I don't have my team hired yet. I've identified some solid candidates. I'd like to have them on by early January. But yeah, I mean, 2020 was, I think, right around 61 million we raised. And so we've 3X'd that this year effectively or almost, right? And so it's really, and as I'm looking for how do I find people to do what I do? And I see who, not how on your bookshelf. And I have that as well. Right. And that's the thing. That's kind of been my mantra is because of course, and I think that's the roadblock so many leaders run into, right? That they have a vision. And even though this is my business, I have a vision for my team and what we could be and where we could go. And I'm aligned with the managing partner's vision. So for me, it's really, yes, I'm great at this. I know I'm very, very good at it, but I also know that I can coach and develop people to be as good or close to as good as I am at it, and maybe even potentially better. And that's really what I want to do, because then that'll allow me to step back and develop more as a leader and to contribute even more. And so really, for me, as I'm looking at even as I'm on these calls, I'm recording them and I'm taking notes on them and I'm really developing out training for these new people that come on. And right now I'm hiring 2, but as we continue to grow, it might be another 2 next year. I mean, this is going to be a full division at some point. It's going to be all investor relations. So really what I'm focused on now is, even though my day-to-day is very, very busy because I'm trying to work on and in at the same time, which is a challenge, but it's really making sure that I'm taking the best of what I'm doing, that I am training these new guys or gals that come on. And then I'm stepping back and looking at like, okay, we've created a great experience for our investors. We continue to get good feedback, but we don't ever want to rest on our laurels. There's always more we can be doing, right? We can always be improving that experience and getting better and better. And one of the things, as I've been going through this interview process, is a huge part of kind of how I try to live my life. And what I want to encourage my team to do is just that continuous improvement and to continue to look at those little marginal incremental things we can do to get better and better and better. And so, yeah, right now it's focused on creating incredible training for my future team, making sure that I'm hiring the absolute best people, empowering them, right? Giving them big challenges, big goals, and then stepping back and letting them figure out how to do it. And then I get to step back and really from a high level, look at the process, look at, how we can be further fostering these relationships, generating more referrals. If we're at a 62% repeat investor rate, how do we get to 70? How do we get to 75? How do we increase our average invested capital per deal? All those sorts of things. So it's a fun season to be working for this team.
That's awesome. I mean, just seeing the growth and projected growth and how you're planning for that, right? You said you've taken all the calls up to this point, for this year, but hey, as you all grow, it's just not possible, right?
Impossible.
And that was something I had to come to grips with at one point as well. I'm like, because I felt such a responsibility to take all the calls myself. I probably like Dan did, as well. It's like, no, that's the highest and best use of my time for a long time, right? But then eventually, it finally hit me, Andrew. It's like, okay, if I want to double the amount of calls that we're taking right now, it's not possible. It's not possible for Whitney to answer the phone or talk to that many people. It's just not. And so I said, you know what? I better be training somebody right now for it, and so we did, right? And now, that person's growing and growing and growing, into that role. And so I'm not taking as many, but I can take more and they can too. We can take in more, right? But I wanted to ask you quickly on that point. You said you record all the calls. What do you use to record the calls?
Right now.
That could be helpful, I think, to some of the listeners. It's often helpful to maybe hear your response later or after you've got to think about it, because oftentimes these questions you're going to hear these questions over and over, right, from numerous investors. And so it's helpful. And like Andrew even said, in training, it's so helpful to be able to go back and say, John, that's working for you, right? Here's how I answered this question. Or maybe you listen to a few of these calls, you mark them or something. So, hey, here's some good training calls, some good questions, right? What do you use, Andrew?
So I just use an app on my phone, and I'm sure I know there's a ton out there. Rev Call Recorder is a free app. And basically when I'm getting ready to make a call, I just open up the app and it calls another number. And then right after the call, it just sends me a recording of the call. And then I can go back and I'll have my assistant annotate those calls. And you're absolutely right. And I think that, 80% of the time, when I get on a call with an investor, I can tell you what questions they're going to ask, because I've done so many of these. I know what the top 10 questions are. I know what and some folks, whether they've been on a blog or a forum or something, they almost have a script that they're going through, right? Tell me about your track record. Tell me about your full cycle deals, whatever. And those are all very, very good, very important questions, but no one knows. And then it's helpful for me too, because I know I'm good at what I do. I know I'm strong, but I also know I can get better. And that's where it's fun. I think you get bored when you stagnate, even if you're stagnating at a high level. But to continue to improve and to continue to refine and tweak, that's what's fun.
I would say too, it's kind of like running a podcast or running a business. I mean, almost doing anything. Like the first few is just going to be bad, right?
Oh yeah.
But you have to get past that. You have to be willing to hop in there. Obviously, hopefully you've studied some, you understand some terminology, those things, but you're not going to get, to the 20th call till you get past the first one and two, right? And so you have to get in there and make it happen. Appreciate that resource though, because I know there's others who would love to use something like that. So moving forward a little bit though, to where you're at now, tell us about some KPIs maybe you have for yourself. Like how many calls do you want to have and how do you challenge yourself, and how do you track it?
Yeah, absolutely. So KPIs, I mean, right now we're getting somewhere between 300 to 500 new investor leads coming through our different websites and forums and all the different avenues that we use every month. Right. And so, I mean, that's a huge metric for our team, right? We want to make sure that more and more people know what we're doing, know about the opportunities that we afford, but then really it's making sure that we know kind of where each one of those folks is in the process. Right. And I want to make sure that we're having the conversation, number one. And then that and really what I'm working on right now, right, is okay. So once we've had that conversation, once we've had that initial conversation, how long till they invest? Right. And if they don't invest, why not? Right. Was it a follow-up issue? Were we not comprehensive enough on the call? Did they not get enough resources or kind of proof?
How do you find that out?
Yeah, well, that's what we're working on right now. So that's one of the things that again, as I step back and I'm not on the phone, 40 plus hours a week, that I can actually dig into our CRM and make sure that we have those things in place. So on a weekly basis, daily basis, or whatever, I can see where all these different people are in the process and make sure that we're valuing each one of those people that's expressed interest in what we're doing and making sure that they have everything they need to make a well-informed decision. So biggest KPIs for us, right, are referrals. I think that when any business that you're in, right, referrals that's gold. It makes our job easier. But beyond that, what it tells us is there's nothing more, as you know, there's nothing more, I think, sensitive to people than money. Right. And so it's one thing to be like, man, I've got a great dog walker. It's another thing to say, hey, I'm entrusting these people with large amounts of my money. You should do the same. That's a whole nother level of trust and credibility. And I think really making sure, that we are seeing how many people refer us, really valuing those referral relationships. So that's a big one. The repeat investor number is a really big one. I think 62% is a great number, but I would like to see that increase. And those are really the biggest metrics that we're tracking and are going to continue to track. And then capital invested per deal is a big one too. So right now, average investment amount per deal is about 140K. We'd like to continue to see that to grow.
No, that's awesome. Those are some great metrics. And I think oftentimes when you get started, you don't know what to even compare it to. And obviously, you all have been doing this for a few years now, and you all have just built an amazing business, brand, reputation. You've done so well at that. So I would also tell the listener, don't be discouraged by some of these numbers. No. They have, they've done so well at this. However, it gives you something to shoot towards as well. But even just knowing what KPIs that are important, right? Yep. Helps you to, even if the listener's just getting started doing this, or even if you've been doing it for 10 years, hey, it's helpful to see what's important to other operators and what they're tracking, what metrics. So how do you track that? Do you have just an Excel sheet? Do you have some kind of CRM you use? What has made that process work well for you to track so these things? Yeah, you bet. And just to kind of go back to that, one of the things that's been really helpful that I've learned from Dan is he always says version 1 is better than version none. And so it's very, very easy, especially when you're starting out, to try to perfect everything. Like you said, try to make sure you know everything, try to make sure you have all the right tools and whatever. I think for somebody getting started, right, maybe the only metric you track is how many conversations you're having on a weekly basis. Just the more people that you can interact with, the better you can get at those. Extremely important. And then the other thing too is we're doing something very specific, but we hosted a capital raising workshop a couple months ago, right? And I could just kind of see, as we were talking about everything that we do and what we've done, I could kind of see oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. And the reality is, you probably can't, and you probably shouldn't. You should figure out what you do. You should figure out, what you enjoy doing, what your niche is, and that's what you should lean into. And rather than comparing yourself to us or any other group in the space, just figure out what's true for you, where you want to go, and then compare yourself to who you were yesterday, which is a cliche, but I think a good one. But in terms of kind of how we're tracking, so Active Campaign is the CRM database that we use. That works very, very well for us. And again, there's more functionality that we're building out with that right now, but we're able to get a really good idea. That's where we get our repeat investor number. And that's where we track our referrals right now. And that's how we know kind of the leads that are coming in, where the leads are coming in from. And then in terms of keeping track of our investors, how many people are investing with us over and over again, RealPage IMS is the investment management platform, kind of an institutional level platform that we use. And that works very well for us. So those are kind of the two key things, but then we're continuing to build out and explore other platforms and tools as well to make sure that we're
just kind of creating a best-in-class experience and then able to quantify that and build on that.
That's awesome. And we probably won't have time to answer these, but I wanted you to be able to share with the listener maybe two questions that they should be prepared to answer in your role that maybe they wouldn't expect, not the typical track record type question, but any one or two questions that, hey, you know what, if you're going to tell these people that you're fixing to hire, here's two questions you may not expect that you need to be able to answer, or even one question. What would that be?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. That's one question I wasn't expected to answer. Yeah, I think that the questions that surprise me are, and you know this as well, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here for people in our space to really think through this, because while you and I know that this is a tremendous way to invest your money, and my opinion, my well-informed opinion, is this is actually far safer and less risky than, say, just dumping all your money in the stock market and hoping it goes one way or another. But for the typical investor that I speak with, right, they're not typical, but I would say at least 50% of the conversations is this is new to them. They've attended a course. They're realizing that they don't want all their capital tied up in equities as the stock market has gone up. And so to them, this feels risky. And the question is, how do I know that you're legitimate? How do I know that I can trust you, right? There's not and I literally had one investor say, well, I looked on Google reviews, but I couldn't see any Google reviews about you. I wasn't prepared to answer that question. It's a great question. It's an important question. And so I think really having some things prepared there. Yeah. Well, they can't go and look on Yelp to see, how people, what their experience was with an operator or a sponsor. It's okay. How can we address the heart of that question is how do I know that I can trust you? How do I know that you're not going to run away with my money? And so building out some resources and some connection pieces for them so they can really develop that level of trust, because they can ask us all the questions that they want about track record, about how we performed, how we paid distributions, how we ever lost money. But at the end of the day, that's just me telling them something. They don't know me, right? So really what they're asking is, how can I trust you? Where can I go for some third party validation that you are who you say you are and you're going to do what you say you're going to do?
Nice. That is a question that I've had many times as well. And it's hard to say, like, how do I express that you can trust me? Right. Yeah. And that's that whole time, right? And relationship that you're building. And, it takes time to do that. Yep. Some investors that may have that question, it may be 6 months of nurturing them before they actually invest with you. Right. Or maybe even a year, at times, and that's fine. Right. But at least you brought that lead in, you've talked to them, you've answered what questions you can, and now they're there, and they, you can have that back and forth with them, over however long it takes, right, till they feel comfortable. But all right, so a few final questions before we run out of time, Andrew. If you had to pick one way that you all are say sourcing new investor leads right now, I know you all are doing lots of things, but if you had to pick one, what's the best source right now for meeting new investors?
That's a great question. I think really the best source, and when I say best, I mean quality, not quantity, right? The best source is authority platform. So it's having conversations like these. And I think that there can be a little bit of, there's a lot of kind of real estate investment podcasts. And so I think the best source, and I wonder how many of those are just folks like you and I listening to other real estate investor podcasts, and how many new investors are there. And so I think it's really looking to maybe step outside of this very powerful but very specific niche and get on other platforms, other podcasts, other webinars, whatever it may be, that are correlated or related, but not directly in this space, right? Whether it's a personal finance podcast, whether it's kind of a general investing podcast, whether it's a business podcast, an economics podcast or webinar or forum, whatever it may be. So I think that for us those are generally some of the most interesting conversations I have.
What about some daily habits that you have that you're disciplined about that have helped you achieve this level of success?
I think probably the most important and consistent daily habit is just my time in the Word. I have been doing that since I was 18 years old. And I just continue to go back to the Bible. That's full of wisdom and truth. And I find even as much as I love to read, and my bookshelf looks very similar to yours, there's incredible content and resources out there. I'm struck as I'm just reading Proverbs or Psalms or wisdom in the New Testament, just about how to treat people and how to think about things, how much of kind of what our culture, business culture, whatever looks at says, well, this is groundbreaking and this this is absolutely new. Yeah, it may be, but it's also very old as well. And so I think just prioritizing my relationship with God, prioritizing relationships with people that push me and help me to grow. And then just, I love to learn. So I am always still reading and just kind of exploring my curiosities, and then just surrounding myself with people that are way smarter and way better than me. And so I just, again, to use a cliche, I don't ever want to be the smartest guy in the room. And that's absolutely the situation I find myself in right now. So that's very helpful for continued growth.
Appreciate that answer a lot. And I think you and I would relate in a big way about that and just our priorities around that. I mean, it's almost like there's somebody that wrote the Bible that knows everything, right?
Been around for a while.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've been around for a while.
Yeah.
That's funny. I appreciate you sharing that. And I thought of another question though, that I wanted to ask you earlier that I think is helpful to the listeners who are in this position, right? Either just starting their business or either they're just getting into that role. You came from a background of sales, right? And a different type of product, right? But then you came into this business, and how did you educate yourself to be confident on those phone calls like that, with investors? How did you learn this business fast enough and to the point, hey, now I can take all these calls and I'm confident, doing it, even though maybe you didn't have a vast experience, a level of experience in this specific industry. Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I've always been, so it kind of an interesting thing about me. I never graduated college. And the reason being is that I just do not learn that way. And so sitting in a classroom, just having somebody kind of spew information at me and then being asked to regurgitate that was just not the way I learned. And so I'm a kinesthetic learner. I learn by doing. And even when I was doing my own single family capital raising on a fractional scale of what we're doing now, I kind of learned at the bare minimum, and then I just dove into it. And that's, that's not everybody's learning style, but that's my learning style. And so when I moved into this role and I knew I was moving into this role, I went through every single offering memorandum we have. I went through all the content that this group would put together. I read every book available on the subject. And then I educated myself as much as I could. I think I had some of the baseline skills, but then I really give kudos to Dan, because Dan trained me. We spent about a week or two training, and I did not think that he was going to hand off the majority of the calls to me as quickly as he did, but probably about 2 weeks in, he said, "Okay, I think you can do it now." And I was like, "Are you sure?" but it was, I think that's such an amazing leadership ability to give trust. And because I knew how important these relationships were, and because I knew that he was trusting me, it made me want to rise to the occasion. And so, I learn a certain way. I kind of learn by doing. I'll just jump in there and get after it. But I really have to give credit to Dan and the passive investing leadership that's given me a tremendous amount of trust. And then I want to be worthy of that trust. Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate you elaborating on, there was a training period. You said a week to 2 weeks, something like that. Was that him, maybe you joining him on some calls, then him joining you on some calls, I would imagine? Oh yeah. Is that kind of roughly how you all did that? Yeah. So we spent the first probably week and a half, 2 weeks. And I listened in on a ton of calls with him in person, and then, virtually, and just took notes and asked questions, whatever. And then probably towards the end of that second week we switched, and I started taking the calls, and then he would give me real-time feedback. So we'd be sitting on a call and he'd be, texting me, and then we get off a call, and he and I would jump on a call for a couple of minutes, and, "Hey, this is what I think you did well. This was no good. This is where you can improve. And really just learning how to do it, and then learning how to do it in a way that was natural for me, because nobody's going to do it. I do it a certain way. You do it a certain way. Anybody that's raising capital and is in an IR role like this, it's got to be natural for you. And so that really, really comes across. And if you're just parroting somebody else's answers or trying to do it like somebody else, it's not going to, that's going to come across. That's great feedback. And I just think it's helpful for someone to think about how can you be trained for this role, and you don't have to come from industry specific experience. You can do this. And okay. So how do you like to give back? We're active in our church, and my wife and I both, we love to give. And so we just continue to, as we're blessed financially. We just continue to be struck by God's abundance towards us. And it just warms our heart to be able to give. And so as we just continue to interact with people in our community, in our church, in just different spheres that we're in that are in need, we just have a chunk set aside. It's just a separate giving account. And my wife has an incredibly generous heart. And so when we see somebody in need, it's like generally one of us will say, well, how much do you want to give? And it's really fun to, oftentimes we're aligned on the number. It's like, man, that's what I was thinking too. Let's do it. And so we love to give financially. I love to just, encourage and coach other people with my limited level of knowledge. So I was on a call with somebody yesterday that's just getting started out and is just kind of running into some roadblocks and some struggles in real estate investing. And so I love to encourage. Like I'm the you can do it. I'm the let's go. Get back up. So I'm a big encourager, and I love kids. And so at church, serving the kids ministry, and just love hanging out with babies and first and second graders specifically, and just loving on them and having fun with them and giving their parents a break for a couple hours. That's
awesome, Andrew. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing that. And just want to say thanks again for your time and just generosity in sharing, what you're doing at passiveinvesting.com and just how you all are scaling, how you're thinking about that in this, investor relations role that you're in, and how you have really just tackled that head on. It sounds like, and just doing a great job at that. But I just think so many things you shared today are so useful to the listener who's trying to do the same thing. Some of these you just wonder, right? Often, and then when you're getting started, you don't know what you should be tracking, or maybe how some good ways to get in front of investors, or maybe you're worried about that phone call. And I just appreciate your ability today to help maybe ease some of those things, right? For those listeners. Andrew, how can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you? Probably LinkedIn is the best place. I think I sent my LinkedIn profile ahead of time, but just Andrew Davis on LinkedIn, passiveinvesting.com, obviously. And that's I'm not much of a social media guy. So if you're going to find me on social media, that's where I'm going to be, or you can just reach out to me directly, Andrew at passiveinvesting.com, and be happy to help any way I can.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.